Good morning, everyone. I'm Dipankar Lahkar from Aaranyak. I welcome you to today's webinar to be talk to be delivered by my colleague, Dr. Dipankar Lahkar. Dipankar will be talking about vultures, the vulture crisis. So Dipankar will be delivering his talk for about 25 minutes maximum, and then you can ask your questions in the chat room, and Dipankar will be uh, addressing them. If time doesn't permit, you can also contact Dipankar directly later with your queries. So now I request Dipankar to start with his talk. Thank you.
So good afternoon. Hello everyone and welcome to this session. And first of all, I would like to thank you all for taking out time and being with me today for the discussion on vultures. So straight away, if you probably see on a screen, I'm showing you a presentation. So first of all, I would like to talk little bit on the vultures. So vultures are fall under a big groups of birds. It's called the birds of prey. That means this group is actually, they prey birds or other animals. That's why we call it a birds of prey. And the whole birds of prey group is divided into two orders. One is Falconiformes and other is Trigiformes. So Falconiformes all are the diurnal raptors. The birds of prey are also called as a raptor. So Falconiformes are diurnal raptor and Strigiformes are the nocturnal raptors. Like owls. Owls are basically on Strigiformes, but vultures fall under Falconiformes. So Falconiformes is further divided into three main families. Accipitridae, all kites, all vultures, eagles, buzzard, all are under this family. Then Cateridae has two specific group of birds. One is new-world vultures and secretary bird, and other is Sagittaridae. Sagittaridae are mainly the falcons. So coming into the world of vultures, so vultures is a big group of birds again. It has almost 23 species together with old world vultures and new world vultures. So old world vultures has 16 species found mostly in Asia, Africa, and Europe. And new world vultures are confined to American subcontinent. But both the groups are not coming from the same origin, or they don't have a kind of same clan. You can say that they have a convergent evolution. Like simple example is the flight patterns of birds and bats. Like birds have a feeder, and the bats has a patagia, but both are used for the same purpose for flight. But before going into the topic more, I would like to draw your attention on few of the interesting facts of old world vultures and new world vultures. So both the group has a very interesting and important phenomena for the wild for their conservation, especially in light of COVID-19. So the main important thing is that it has been proved that they have a set of very highly specialized acids contained in their stomach, which can digest even anthrax, cholera bacteria, and even rabies. So that's why vultures are very important. They clean our environment. They clean our environment from the pathogens. Then the new world vulture has a very specific character called the urohydrosis. Means they defecate on their legs to cool them by evaporation, which is not seen in the old world vulture. But both the species has a common similarity. Like if you happen to see their neck is kind of bold and lightly feathered. Because it is specialized to stay clean when confronted with blood and body fluids present in the carcass. And when they come out from the carcass, the remaining germs actually backed off by sun. That's why they are that carrion eater. That's why this particular modification happens on their neck. Then, like in all the animal groups, has a specific name, like we call as a herd of, uh, ungulates or the pride of a lion. So a group of vulture is called venue, VENUE, venue. And when they're cycling in the air, we call as a cattle, KETTL, cattle. So every animal has a defense mechanism, but vulture has a very peculiar defense mechanism. Like when they get scared off, they actually vomit. So why they vomit? If they vomit, then sometime what happened? The relatively undigested food is rewarded with a free meal to the predator, or if the food is mostly digested, then the foul-smelling substances act as a deterrent. And sometimes what happens, they directly put on the face of the predator, so it acts as a sting. So that way they mainly defense. That is the main defense mechanism vultures generally use. Then they are the communal nesting bird, means they nest with a mixed species. Suppose in a particular tree, you may see long-bill white-backed vulture and slender-bill vulture together. But people told in different ways, even I read in different articles, that the exceptional is found with the king vultures. King vulture generally they nest alone in a particular tree, but they are also nesting together with a community. So they are the communal birds. And the old wall vultures generally they nest both in the trees and the cliffs. Long-bill vultures generally they prefer to nest on the cliffs. But the new wall vultures, they don't build nest. They lay egg on the ground. Then they also feed together. All the species can feed together. Or even in India, I forgot to mention you, among the 16 old world vulture, 9 species of vultures were found in India. And you can't believe that the 9 species can feed together on the same carcass. That I'll come to the next slide, how they can do that. Then vultures are one of the highest flying birds. I'll give you an example. In 1973, on collided with and Delta Airlines passenger flight at an elevation of 37,000 feet. You can't believe that in 30,000 feet elevation, where we need a specific, specific environment for taking oxygen. But these birds, they can fly up to that, level. So vultures are the highest, flying birds among all the birds. So these are some of the interesting fact about vultures. Then one more thing is that vulture is mentioned in many ancient literature, even in Indian literature, Greek literature, and Middle Eastern literatures. So vulture is a very old bird. It has been existing in our art for a long time, and that's why it is very important for us to understand how they are coping with the growing environment and how they are coping with in the modern environment. These are the 9 species of old world vultures found in India. Among them, the Indian vulture, also called as a long-bill vulture, white-crowned vulture, slender-bill, Himalayan griffon or Himalayan vulture, and Eurasian griffon, all are belong to a same genus called Zips. And other are monotypic. And I again come back to the feeding thing. Why they are specialized to feed together in the same environment? They have a very distinguished, feeding needs, feeding segregation in their feeding needs. Because if you happen to see all the zip species of vultures, they have a long bill, a long neck. So they can probe into the carcass, deep into the carcass, and they can specialize to feed the visceral organs. If you happen to see the red-headed vulture and cinereous vulture, their beak is very strong. So they first cut the carcass, they tear the carcass, they usually eat the skin of the carcass. When they tear the carcass, these zip species of vultures, then they jump into the carcass and they probe deep into the carcass to eat the visceral organs. Then the other two vultures, the Egyptian vulture is the smallest among them, and it is mentioned that in Egypt they used to steal the eggs of big birds, and they then after that then they break with a stone, which you can see in the photograph. So they are specialized to eat the tendon and ligaments. Even they used to eat the maggots. Then the bearded vulture is a very also called as a lammergeier. So they are specialized to eat the bones. What they do, they take away the bone from the carcass, then they put into the stone, and then that way they break the bone and eat them. So that way they can all the species can eat on the same carcass, and that has been recorded from Kauladio, Ghana, where 7 species were eating together on the same carcass. So coming into the topic, in 1992, it was estimated that almost 40 million vultures were there in India, and they were creating a lot of problem in aviation. And this is the photograph from Delhi, and basically no one were generally cared for the vultures. Even when I was young, when I was going to the primary school, I saw the vultures on the side of the railway lines where cattle communities where there often cattle dies and vultures eat on them. But the vultures are disappear from us, and it has been recorded from in 90s, and suddenly people started believing that vultures are disappearing from our earth, from our skies. And it also brings a lot of problems to the human society, specifically after the declining of vulture population. The population of the dog is increasing significantly in India, and in 2008, World Health Organization declared that among the Asian countries, India has the highest rabies cases. And it also cost Indian government 34 billion rupees to tackle with the rabies alone per year. So it also hamper in our economy. That's why after that it was found that almost 99.9% vultures were declined within 20 years period. So the pressure was building up, pressure was mounting. What kills the vultures? How the vultures are dying in India or Indian subcontinent, because in Africa, vultures, it was started in 60s where people used to do poisoning and killing vultures. But India, people generally don't kill vultures. But what caused the vultures to die? So this gentleman called the Ock, who was a veterinary microbiologist working in College of Veterinary Medicine at Washington State University. He was working in Pakistan with a big group of scientists, and they finally revealed that a particular drug called diclofenac, which was introduced in Indian market in 80s, was the main killer of vultures. He potentially fed diclofenac less carcass to the vultures, and found that after that vulture shows a particular syndrome called the neck dropping syndrome. You can see here in the photograph. So when you see such syndrome, that means the vulture is affected by visceral diclofenac. Diclofenac actually, affected vulture's liver and kidney, and that way vulture dies. So the safe alternative drug was, so Indian government subsequently banned diclofenac in 2008, and after that, Indian government has prescribed that meloxicam, which is also a non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drug, is safe for the vultures, safe for the environment. So what happened after the ban of diclofenac in 2008, 2010? There is a countrywide carcass survey was conducted to see how much diclofenac residues remain in the dead cattle. Then they saw that the ban has effectively working in India, and 50% of the carcass were diclofenac free in 2010, and subsequently 2018 there was another countrywide survey conducted, and it shows that diclofenac is almost wiped out from the Indian market or from the cattle management system. Eventually, in Assam, diclofenac is almost free from the cattle treatment purpose. But still, the vultures are dying. Their population is declining day by day. So if you happen to see in Assam, in last 4 years, more than 500 vultures, this is the recorded cases, 500 vultures were died. So again, the people started thinking how the vultures were dying after the ban of diclofenac, the cattle from the cattle management system. The vulture population should revive back, but it is not happening. Vultures are still dying. Then in some areas, especially I'm talking about Assam, this particular pesticide called the carbofuran, or we call as a puradan. Puradan actually kills the vulture. That's why I'm telling pesticide kills. Now, how the pesticide kills? Now I'm giving you an example. So before that, I would like to say that why I talked about why I flagged community-based vulture conservation, because community-based vulture conservation is not a new topic. It has been started in 60s in Africa when African vultures were killed by the poachers, because what happened when the vultures saw any carcass, they started circling, and potentially the forest people come to know that something happened in between the forest, and they can do their action promptly. That's why that was creating a problem to the poachers, and that's why poachers started killing vultures. And then in 60s and 66, actually 1966, the vulture restaurant was started in Africa, and they were become very successful. And the same concept was taken by started in 2006 in our neighboring country Nepal, where also vulture population is reviving. Not only vulture population, even interview told that almost like 38% to 40% people from around those villages are now getting alternative livelihood as a ecotourism, because people used to come over there to see the vultures. So this way, the vulture is not. This way, the vultures are not only saving the livelihood of the people, but unfortunately, in Assam, in India, we do not see such initiative. I'll take you to more example why the community-based vulture conservation is very important in the later phase of this talk. So let's start with the case which has happened very recently in Assam. Probably most of you have heard about or you have read on newspaper. The 19 vultures were died of poisoning in Sibsagar district. Actually, 32 vultures were affected by poisoning, and 19 among them, 19 were died, which were in Lepai village in Sibsagar. So I closely monitored that case, and I talked to the respective DFO of Sibsagar, and then I came to know the story behind this poisoning. So what happened in our rural Assam? The cattle are free ranging mostly. After the harvesting, the big grounds are full of grasses, and people used to ride their cattle for grazing over there. And those fields are so big that human habitations are a bit far from them. But at least one or two cattle sets holders were keep monitoring them from the distance. And she informed me significantly that dog population has increased incredibly in those areas, and dogs have become a potential threat for the cattle farmers. Usually they kill the cattle while grazing. They basically targeted on the on cattle which are a bit lazy, and they kill them, or they sometimes kill them, or they sometimes severely injured them. And then if you happen to see by the time the person who was monitoring their cattle reached the spot, the dogs left, and the cattle either died or they severely injured. What happened? It cost a lot actually. These cattle farmers are very poor people. If a loss of a cattle cost about 20,000 to more than lakhs. That's why they got angry. and they put furadon for retaliatory purpose to kill the dogs, but the dogs never come. The vultures often come down to those spots and they subsequently dies. This is the case why poisoning is happening, why poison kill the vultures in most of the parts of India. Now for that, actually two things are mainly responsible. We have to work on two major things. One is the cattle management system and other is the economic condition. Both are interlinked. If you don't have economy, you cannot put your cattle on an AC set. So that's why, and both the things you cannot improve in a 1 year or 2 years. It needs time. And specifically in this particular time when our economy is not doing good, we have to take alternative measures to tackle those conditions. So that's why we need certain initiative like Vulture Conservation Network, where we can involve common people for the conservation of vultures. So to combat against the poisoning, what I believe, we need to coordinate with the agencies. So how we'll coordinate with the agencies? What are the agencies? We need to coordinate properly with the enforcing agencies, forest department, veterinary cares, and whoever is involving in the vulture conservation work. All should become on a particular desk. Or we have to bring everyone on board on a common system, so that we have to trigger, so that we can trigger the veterinary care, because we know that if you reach early into those situations, if some poisoning cases happening to vultures, if you reach the place as soon as quickly, then probably you can save those vultures. Because I have seen that almost 100 vultures were recovered from the poisoning because they put some drug called atropine sulfate, which is act as an antidote. Actually, when you inject that, the vultures vomit it out, and subsequently after that you get some time to treat those vultures. So the veterinary care plays a very important role in this case. And second thing is that cattle management. We have to constantly and closely monitoring our cattle management system, vaccination and all these things. The farmers should get proper benefit whoever is dealing with the cattle, then the proper awareness, because these farmers are poor people. They may not know about the consequences of poisoning. They would like to kill the dog, which actually responsible for the great loss of their economy. But we have to aware them that they are not killing the dogs. They are actually killing our important species, vultures. So the awareness is a very important thing, I believe, to stop the poisoning in Assam particularly. Then we need a rapid response team, because who will be in the rapid response team? Us, our general citizen. That's why we should start with a concept like community-based vulture conservation or citizen-based vulture conservation work. So that's it. I think I would like to stop here. And if you have any question, you can flag it and I'll try to answer your question.